This is Thomas O'Malley from Worm Shepherd and Ingested, and you are watching Richard Metal Fan.
Hey, what's up, guys? Episode 322 of Richard Metal Fan Interviews, calling from Zoom, and I'm here with Thomas O'Malley. He plays bass with Steel Mage, Warm Shepherd, and also new bassist for Ingested. So, how are you doing today, man? It's so great to be able to have you on.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm doing just fine, thank you. I've just finished tracking some stuff for Worm Shepherd actually, about 10 minutes ago. So, the interview has been held at a very opportune moment. How
Yeah.
about yourself? How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. It's kind of a rainy day here in Georgia in the US. I guessing how is it over in England?
Oh, dude, I know all about rainy days.
Yeah, it's a typical stereotypical English thing.
Oh, it's correct. Yeah, that is how it is, unfortunately.
Yeah. And think it's kind of convenient that we're both wearing ingested shirts.
Yeah, yeah. Do you know what? I was wearing a hoodie, but it got unusually hot in this room. So
Yeah.
yeah, I thought I would rep the band a little bit. Cheeky little plug.
Yeah.
You know how it is.
Yeah. Does it feel weird to like wear your own band's merch?
Um, it feels weird wearing it now that I'm a member. Before I was a member, I used to revel in it because I own quite a lot of merch now. And whenever I want something, I can just get it, and it's amazing. It's insane. But yes, it does kind of feel a bit weird now.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's so great to be able to talk with you, man. So, kind of the format of the show is I want to talk about like your musical history and sort of do a rundown of your discography, but take me back to young Thomas O'Malley. So, growing up in the UK, what were like the first bands that got you into metal? What made you want to slap at the bass?
Well, I'll start with the bass thing. So, as for bass, I didn't really have there wasn't really like one guy. Normally with bassists, there's normally like one fella who kind of is the reason why people play what they play. But for me, I was early years of high school for me in the UK, maybe year 7 or 8, perhaps. I don't know what that is for you guys, but it's I was about 11 at the time, 12, perhaps 13, and I was walking past the music room and heard an instrument that I liked the sound of, found out that it was bass, and decided that I wanted to do that. Yeah, that's my thing. Um but for bands that got me into metal, because I wasn't really big on metal until I must have been about, yeah, end of 13, maybe 14 years old. So obviously Slipknot and Metallica are the bands that everyone likes, but the band that
Oh
really
yeah.
got me committed was Trivium. Now, Trivium, funnily enough, I listen to them quite well every now and again to try and find the point where it clicked with me, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
sometimes you
They're
listen
one
to a
of my
band, it's
favorites for sure.
they're unbelievable, man,
Yeah, yeah, they were
unbelievable.
in the UK recently. They're doing this thing where they're it's 20 years of their best album Ascendancy and they're playing it in its entirety.
With
I don't know if
Bullet,
you
I
ever
went to
catch
it.
that. Oh
I
yeah,
did.
how
I
was
went to it.
that?
Oh, it was nice to see the band that I like fangirled over throughout high school after all these years. Nah, they were unbelievable. Seeing them guys live was just it kind of felt like everything that had ever worked for us made complete sense. Seeing them in person was quite inspirational, I'll
Yeah,
say,
they're still one
actually.
of my high school bands. I'm actually going to see them in May in Atlanta. It's like that whole lineup for especially in the US. It's like Trivium, Bullet for My Valentine, August Burns Red, and Bleed from Within. That pretty much screams like my taste in high school in one tour.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we didn't get the Bleed from Within and August Burns Red. That would have been really cool because I too like Bleed from Within, but I believe they've just been touring with Slipknot.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was an American thing as well, but they were
It,
definitely
I,
here.
w- I don't think they toured the States with them, but I remember first time seeing Bleed from Within was with ABR a couple years ago. It was their first ever US tour, and they've been a band for now they're hitting their 20-year mark, which is great. I met like Scott and the boys, and Scott's like one of the nicest dudes ever.
Yeah, yeah, no, they are brilliant. They are brilliant, and the music they make is like in unbelievable. It's the sort of music where um, it's it's kind of like a perfect blend of what everybody likes, similar to Trivium, in fact, because they're just the riffs that they come out with. It's so like it's music for most ears. That's how I like to see it. It's music that people can listen to, and it's really easy to listen to, but it's still heavy. It's got that element to it.
Yeah. Yeah, so then kind of flash forwarding like what was like the first bass that you actually had owned?
My first bass was a Squire short scale vintage modified Jaguar, and that thing was with me for at least 3 years. And I think from the very first day of starting to play bass, it was on my lap every day, every night, and I worked so hard and for so long for the longest time, and it was that bass that kind of it took me through the motions, really. But as for my first, we'll call it the first proper bass, first full length bass. It was an Ibanez SR370E, I believe it's called. 4 string blue. It was really nice, and I had that for a few years. And but no, the Squire, I got the short scale because I'm naturally a small built guy. So I'm 5'5" and play these 5 string
Oh wow.
multi-scale monsters. But at the time, being 12, 13, I was I couldn't reach the first fret of even a standard scale instrument. It was unbelievable. But now here I am playing these instruments that are bigger than me. My first bass, though, rocked my world, man.
Nice. Nice. And do you remember like the first song you learned to play on bass?
Yeah, it was "Smells Like Teen Spirit" by Nirvana, of all things.
Hey, got to start somewhere, man.
That's it. It's a song that everyone knows and loves, and it's super easy to play, and it doesn't get old.
Nice. And so kind of talking about like I believe your first band was Steel Mage. Was that your first band or was there any like local bands like in Manchester before that?
Technically, Steel Mage is my first proper band. I had bands in high school, but we didn't really get out and do anything. Steel Mage, yeah, I would say that was my first my first band.
Yeah. Yeah. And so tell me about how you joined because the band formed in 2016 and then you joined up in 2019. So how'd you get to know the guys?
Yeah, so I for the longest time was friends with a fella called Tommy. On Instagram he goes by Tommy Shreds. And I'd known him for quite a while, and then due to circumstance, I moved to his high school, and from then on, we, jammed a lot, practiced a lot, together. For whom the bell tolls, seek and destroy, all the fun stuff. And then we were like, we need to make a band. We've got a drummer, we've got you on bass, guitar, need a vocalist now. We came up with the name, and the guy who was drumming for us at the time ended up leaving due to college and university. So we brought a guy called Jack into the band who is now drumming in a few bands. He plays for Desolated, he plays for Sovereign, and I
Wow.
believe he still plays for Steel Mage. He's got I'm going to see him tomorrow with Sovereign actually from New Zealand. Um, and yeah, so that's when things really kicked off. We got Louis into the band who was singing at the time, and then I lasted maybe another. I left Steel Mage last December, I
Oh
think.
wow. Well,
Um,
because Metal
yeah.
Archive still lists you as still in the band.
Oh, I revel in it. Don't. Yeah, it's absolutely fine.
Yeah. Yeah, like
I'm proud of
Metal
that
Archives
band.
needs to get its shit together.
Well, I check Metal Archives quite regularly, and I'm quite pleasantly surprised at how quick people are to update it. Because I joined Worm Shepherd, and then the day later, my name was on Worm Shepherd's Metal Archives. I'm pretty sure, or
Yeah.
Worm Shepherd was associated with me somehow on the Metal Archives.
Yeah. And I bet you when this interview gets uploaded, like I bet you Joe Metal Archives will update your page.
I hope so.
Yeah.
And that photo that's on there of me when I was like 13, that needs to go as well.
Yeah, is that like you like doing that squish
Like
that's like
squatted down.
squatting in like some like foresty area?
Yeah, it was a nice location, but the photo again, I was like 13. The times have changed, man. That needs to go.
Yeah. Yeah, but tell me about making like the first Mage EP, the Uprising of Hatred. Like I was listening to like Steel Mage like in preparation for this interview. It's fucking good shit. Like the name sounds just fucking metal, Steel Mage. So what was sort of like the whole like recording process for the Uprising of Hatred? I believe that was like your first recording like ever.
Yeah. The recording process was well, we the songs that we have on there, I believe there's four. Do you know what? Off the top of my head, it would take me a while to list them because I've done that many songs since. But I do remember that we had about 75% of the songs on the EP written. And And then when the drummer that we had at the time left and we got Jack in the band, that's when we kind of started to put our foot down a little bit. So we got the songs written really quickly. We booked the studio dates before they were finished. And like the majority of small bands, we ended up finishing a lot of the content that we had in the studio while we were recording it. The writing process was a breeze because we got Louis in the band, who was a super, super talented guitarist, and he had a vision of where he wanted things to be, which is always nice to have someone in the band who is like that because it makes everybody else's jobs super easy, and it makes time move quicker. Um, but the writing process, like I said, it was an absolute breeze. It felt like overnight. And when we recorded it, the feedback that we got was unbelievable. Tommy being into thrash the way he is or was at the time, it was also a vision of his to get that EP out and cover all the songs on social media, which is what he did. Um, and yeah, it was a great time. Our first EP, all of our first releases, we were absolutely chuffed with it. Um, the studio, I remember being long and not enjoying it that much because I played bass. My part was the easiest, so I think I recorded all the bass within about like one or two takes per track. So I was waiting all day
Wow.
for all the other stuff to get done, and as soon as I recorded bass, it didn't even no longer than 45 minutes. I don't think. Um, so I didn't enjoy the studio, but as for the writing process and then the shows that followed up after that, it was, the time of my life, the time of all of our lives.
Nice. And then of course I know it was sort of like recorded during the pandemic, and I know like the whole pandemic kind of like fucked up like the whole music industry and stuff. So for I guess like for you personally, how do you like manage to like deal with that?
So the pandemic for me wasn't that much of a problem. And the reason is because I'm sure you're familiar, but when in the UK we leave school, we do GCSEs, which are the final exams that we do, and then they're kind of in our history forever. So what happened with me and the school year that I was in is due to the pandemic, we left school about 2, 3 months early, and we completely missed our GCSEs, and we were giving our grades for us basically. So I hated school every second of it. It was the real life equivalent to hell for me. It was such. I would rather have been anywhere else but school. So I had something like 7 months at home to do absolutely nothing but play music, relax, stay up all night. Hell, I was like 15 at the time as well. So
Oh,
I had
wow.
no job, so much to do. I didn't need to leave the house for anything. So the pandemic for me wasn't a problem. The only part where it started to become a problem was during our writing process for a song that you may have seen on Steel Mage's Spotify page called Mandatory Detention. Um,
Which is a fucking killer song.
Thank you. That yeah, it was like it's still probably one of the favorite songs that I'm personally on to this day, if I'm honest. It was a big breaking point for in a good way. It was a big sort of break for the band because that's one of the most streamed songs we have, and it meant a lot to us. A lot of people, COVID and the pandemic, it drove them insane. For me, I loved it. So getting back in the studio, even hating it the first time, was like a breath of air. It was really nice. Um, the band itself, we weren't really playing shows much before the pandemic anyway, so being off for that amount of time, we still had enough time to build up momentum,
Yeah, and sort of like
release.
hone your craft.
Exactly. Absolutely. So we would do things like record playthrough videos of EP songs, the Uprising of Hatred EP songs, put them on YouTube, Instagram, a lot of it. And we kept ourselves busy. We saw it more like an opportunity rather than a break and a worry for money. A lot of bands, of course, the touring bands couldn't make money very easily during the pandemic. So um, for us, it didn't matter because we weren't making money off it anyway. So we had the opportunity, like I said, to write and to have a bit of fun with it. And we'd all left school early and had 7 months to do nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, and so you were kind of mentioning like you were in school at the time. So how did you like balance between like school and then like playing in a band?
Um, it was more practice room sessions at lunch, on our lunch breaks. And then at weekends, it's probably when we would book a studio out when we had nothing else to do, really.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
So more straightforward than a lot of bands, to be completely honest. But we were
yeah.
young at the time and had loads of time to spare,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Yeah.
no work.
Yeah, and you're still young. Like you're 20 and I'm 30. So I like when I was surprised, I was like, "Holy
Mhm.
shit, I had no idea you were that young. You're like 10 years younger than me."
Yeah, it's one of the most frequently asked questions on tours is how old are you? How long have
Yeah.
you been playing? How old are you?
Yeah. But then kind of like talking about like the first full-length Steel Mage album As the Chapel Falls. It's totally a kind of a different compared to the EP. So what was that like making being as this was like the debut full-length Steel Mage album?
We were very, very, very happy. We'd always known we wanted to get an album out as the next thing we did. So two of our members left, Tommy and Louis, the singer, and other guitarist, rhythm. I don't really put labels on guitarists these days. It's more like you play this part, I'll play this part. So both of our guitarists and our vocalist left. So we had to get some more members in, but we decided to go forward as a five piece. Now, the guitarist that we got into the band is called Oliver Parks. He still plays for Steel Mage. His writing and the demos that he had was the sort of direction that me and Jack wanted to go in. Well, I won't say right from the start because we didn't really know what we were doing at the start, but then we decided we wanted to go into more of a core kind of sound. And even then, the album doesn't really show that mindset really. But it was great because, like I said, it is the kind of direction we wanted to move in. And with a new vocalist and two new guitarists, it was an opportunity for us to be ever more creative than before. So um, it was wonderful. It took a while and it was expensive for our first album. But of course, we managed to make it all back. And the shows that we played to promote that album were unbelievable. We did Bloodstock Open Air in the UK
Oh wow.
um, after winning the Metal to the Masses competition for it. Essentially, Battle of the Bands, if you're unfamiliar.
I've heard of
Um,
Battle of the Bands. I know we have something similar to that here in the
yeah,
US.
yeah. So for Bloodstock Open Air, we have Metal to the Masses. So it's essentially exactly the same as Battle of the Bands, but for metal bands, really. And then if you win that, you get to play on the third to largest stage out of four stages.
Holy
So
shit, dude.
it was the
That
biggest crowd any of us have
yeah,
played to.
that's a big fucking accomplishment.
Of course, yeah, certainly. And what's really funny as well is, um, after that release of the album, my band supported Ingested in Sheffield, and
Which
that's
little
how
would
we
you
met.
know.
Yeah, well, that's it. So, when we played at Bloodstock, Ingested played at Bloodstock on a different, the bigger stage to what we were playing, the same year. So we bumped into them and had a conversation with them. Hey, we supported you at this venue, um, and then they reached out to me like maybe not even a year later, asking me to session for them. And then obviously 2 years later, I've become a member, which honestly
Yeah.
it's a
Oh, what you're
blessing.
getting there. But
Yeah.
yeah, but then of course I believe your final release with the band, you did the single Under the Moon and Stars. I love that song. So tell me about making that.
Under the Moon and Stars. We wanted to release singles before the next kind of bunch of songs. So whether it be an EP or an album, we wanted to release singles first. So it was we lost our vocalist due to circumstances um that will remain undisclosed for now.
Yeah.
But we lost him and we got a new guy in, and we then took the opportunity to experiment a little bit more, which is why we wanted to do the singles thing. So we released God of Heresy, which is we did the music video for that one. And then Under the Moon and Stars was a bit softer, but still had the fast breakdown section and then a big emotional chorus. So that song was more us trying to figure out where we wanted to be and what sort of music we wanted to put out. And it's when I was in the before I left the band, we were still at a point where we were unsure, but I know what demos are there. I know what's going to be released next, and um, it's very, very different from Under the Moon and Stars, but similar to God of Heresy. All we did was record everything from home and then send it to the guy who produced it for us. And then it was as easy as that. I think the only studio time we actually had was Jack in well doing drums for it. And that was his responsibility. The rest of us, we just, it was super, super easy, super quick release. And then it happened to be one of my favorite songs that we've ever done. And the same with everybody else.
Yeah. And then you, like you mentioned before, you sort of at the end of 23, you left Steel Mage. So how hard was it to leave it, being as it was like your first band?
Um, it was definitely like a breakup. No, no. Well, it was definitely the feeling of the end of a chapter. Um, I do talk to them. I'm still in a group chat with them, and there was no bad blood in it whatsoever. Um, I eh, became a bit too busy for Steel Mage, having Worm Shepherd and Ingested now. So it was only right that I would leave. It did hit hard because it is, the band was like my child in a sense, understandably, because it's been a thing since I was 14 years old. So it was tough, but because we were all on good terms, that made it way, way, way easier for me to move on from it.
Yeah, at least it's nothing bad. Like y'all are like good friends.
Absolutely. I'm going to see Guilt Trip tomorrow with Sovereign to see Jack, who is still the drummer for Steel Mage. He's one of my best mates. And,
Oh yeah, gotta
we're
support your
still,
bros.
exactly. So we're still all in touch. We're still all mates and everything's absolutely fine. But yeah, it wasn't an easy decision.
Yeah. But then kind of going into to Warm Shepherd now. So how'd you end up joining the band?
Um, so I've been friends with Harry today and for quite a long time. So Harry, a lot of people know him from playing with Immortal Disfigurement. Um, and I know that Harry does a lot of solo stuff. He does a lot of recordings for people. He writes a lot of songs for people. So I do like to keep in touch with what he's doing. I do like follow his social medias. This one band came up and I really liked the sound of it. So I went on the page and it had Harry's name and then two other guys' names. And I looked at their profile and I was like, oh, they've not got a bassist. So I popped up to that story that Harry put on Instagram and said, if you need a bassist, let me know. And he was like, you know what? We do need a bassist actually. And then not even 24 hours later, I got a message from Trey saying, yeah, we want you as our bassist. So it was really, really easy. And they're some of my favorite people on the planet. It's the sort of music that's like that it's my sort of music. It's the sort of music I listen to.
Yeah, with that
Um
symphonic deathcore,
yeah,
it sounds fucking awesome.
of course, man. Thank you. It's it's the sort of music I've always personally wanted to make. And because we are more online at the minute, we're not touring for the foreseeable future anyway. It's something we've really got to think about, but it works in my favor being touring basis for Ingested. It makes life easy that it's an online thing for now. So it works favorably for me in any aspect that you can think of. It's my favorite sort of music to make, and I can do it from my bedroom. And yeah, they've got a really good following, really supportive following, considering a lot of stuff has happened with Worm Shepherd.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And how does like the chemistry work within the band? Because the band is based in Boston, the US, and of course you being in the UK. So how does that sort of like affect sort of like the chemistry within Worm Shepherd?
yeah, I think the only thing it does affect is like I mean, you guys are about 5 hours behind me and Harry. So Harry lives in South Wales in the UK. So he's not an awful long way away from me. But we share the same time zone. So if we send messages to the group chat, we'll get a response 5 hours later. It's that sort of thing. But otherwise, I'd like to think we're quite close to each other, which is great. Considering how physically far away we are.
Yeah. And I think it's funny because now with Adjusted, it's sort of the opposite, where four of you are from the UK, but one lives in the States. So I think
Andrew,
it's funny
yeah.
how it's kind of like the reverse of that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Sean lives like in the same city as me, but on the other side. So it's like you said, it is kind of like the flip side to Worm Shepherd.
Yeah.
So it's nice to be able to see musicians that I play in a band with, even if one of my bands is on the other side of the world, basically.
Totally. But then of course like you this year you've joined Ingested full time. So kind of like you kind of touched upon it before. So where was the first time you've heard of Ingested?
The first time I heard of Ingested was through an old friend of mine, Tommy, who used to play for Steel Mage. He mentioned them to me, and I can't remember the context of it, but I was younger at the time, and I wasn't really in the sort of death metal-y kind of that wasn't what I was listening to at the time. So really, completely honestly, it wasn't really something that interested me. But the first time I ever heard the band name Ingested was when I was about 14 years old. I really got to know Ingested when Steel Mage supported them in Sheffield the one time. Um, and yeah, so it came about really quickly, but at the time I was very young. I wasn't really into it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of cool because I first heard of Ingested back in 2016 or so. They were playing the Summer Slaughter tour. I saw them that
Yeah.
year. That was I think it was like one of their first tours ever in the States. So they played with like Cannibal Corpse and Nile and
Yeah,
Suffocation
yeah.
and
I
shit.
know I've seen the poster. I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, I literally have like the poster right in front of me. Cannibal Corpse, Nile, After the Burial, Suffocation, Carnifex, Revocation,
Yes.
Chrysian, Slarts, Reveal, Veiled. I think that was also their first ever US tour, Ingested and Enterprise Earth. That was a hell of a show I've been to. One of my
Yeah.
favorites.
Well, with all the bands that you've just listed, even to this day, that is like a dream lineup for me to go and watch. Like that's the sort of that's unbelievable. I still hear about that, and I think Enterprise Earth after the burials, Slaughter to Prevail.
Yeah.
That's madness. Cannibal Corpse and Ingested. We my first ever Europe tour was with Cannibal Corpse with Ingested actually, and
Oh
Sean
yeah.
got a selfie with George, and then put it next to a photo that he has where it's a selfie of him and George from like 10 plus years ago.
Oh
It's
wow.
quite funny actually. Yeah,
That's fucking great, man. Man, I
it's
think I've seen
unbelievable.
almost every Ingested tour that they've done since then every US tour they've done since then. I think I missed one tour or so, but yeah, I think I've seen almost every US tour since Summer Slaughter.
Good stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Well, like I said, that lineup, I think, the shit I'd give to bring that back. A lineup like that, that's like a childhood dream for me.
Yeah. Yeah, then I think I've seen them like the band now like 7, 8 times.
That's mental. Of
Yeah.
course, I haven't been there, but
Yeah.
at some point you'll see me.
Yeah. Yeah, but then of course like you joined the band like IB at Live in 2022. So what was how did that come to be get to know like the band at the time?
Yeah, so like I said, we supported them, and then maybe a year later, I had a message saying, "Do you want some session work?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, please, that'd be wonderful." Um, and it started there, and I spent like a week with them at their studio at the time, recording "The Tide of Death and Fractured Dreams," which didn't come out until like a year later. So. I did spend a week with them, and then I played my first two shows with them, which was their 2022 seasons beatings shows. You might have seen, but last year we did seasons beatings again, London and Manchester. It's just the two shows that we do at Christmas time. Um, and then yeah, so since 2022, I've just anytime they've had a European tour or one-off show in Europe, anywhere that isn't America, I've been there
Yeah.
essentially. Next year is when I will be going to America.
Oh wow. Wow, because I know they're currently in America right now, and I was
Yeah.
confused. I was like, well, how come you're not with them? I thought you'd like left the band already. It's like, damn, you just put out a single and you left. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, wow, that was short-lived. No, well, it's more a visa thing really. But on a good note though, by the time I go to America with them, I will be 21, so there won't be any problems with me getting in and out of venues.
Yeah.
Alcohol,
Yeah, because
the lot of it.
I was gonna ask if it was like the age thing.
Yeah, it that was I think the first thing they mentioned to me was he's not 21 yet. But then obviously visas are something that's well, they're difficult to get hold of. So that's something that we need to kind of allow time for. So after this year, hopefully that will be something we look into.
Yeah. But tell me about like the new Ingested single that you put out, Altar of Flesh. I think it's a really great song. I was a little bit nervous, especially with the new lineup and everything. So, well, how did that song come
Yeah,
to be?
yeah, a lot
Because
of
I've
people
heard it. It's
were.
actually a pretty damn good song.
Yeah, a lot of people were nervous for that one, to be honest. But it was so obviously what happened with Jason happened. We were very, very quick to get the members in. And Sean had shown me Altar of Flesh in the past before we had a name for it, the demo of it. And it essentially just said to me, this is going to be the next single with the new lineup. So he sent it to me. I learnt my part, and then we spent a week, say a week. I think we were there for 2 days, 3 days max. And then we did a bunch of stuff at the studio. We recorded some videos and stuff that aren't out yet, but they will be hopefully soon. And then we recorded the music video for it later that week. And a funny story, I actually left the job that I was working at to do that entire
Oh
week of
yeah. What
recording.
job was that?
I was working at a UK supermarket called Sainsbury's.
Hell of a name.
So it's quite similar to Walmart.
Oh
Um,
wow.
but yeah, that's where I was working. But they said if you leave, we will sack you. Or if you miss them days, sorry, we'll sack you. And I
And
said, okay, well, I will
you're like,
leave then.
fuck you, I'm leaving.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's such a. Would I rather record a single, do a music video, two Christmas shows, and some other video related stuff, or work at a supermarket and just not record bass for it, have someone else to do it, and then just kind of defeat the whole purpose of me being like a from now on member of a band, like Ingested. It doesn't really make much sense. Of course, I'm going to leave a job for it.
Yeah, I wouldn't blame you.
Yeah, but Altar of Flesh, it was we were all nervous for it. And for the two shows that we did in the same week of recording, I think we were all a little bit hairy about it because, after Jason leaving, the response that we got from that was very mixed. So we were worried that people were going to come and see us live and hate it, but in fact it's been the complete opposite. And what I have noticed is that the people who have spread negativity about it have then seen Ingested with Josh, and their opinion has almost completely changed about it in a good way. So it's yeah, no, it was fantastic. The whole week was fantastic. The performances so far have been incredible, and everyone's been really, really supportive of it. And I, have very high hopes for our future. This is definitely not the end, and the band is definitely not dead
Yeah,
for those interested.
totally. And then of course this is a new lineup where you joined the band officially with Josh and Andrew. So did you know like Josh and Andrew like prior to joining?
Yeah, so before Josh became vocalist for Ingested, he was their merch guy for I think I think for about 3 years.
Yeah.
Um and as soon as they lost the old guy, they were like, you're doing it. It's your turn. So Josh was like, okay. And now everything's kind of where I believe it's where it's supposed to have been all these years, personally. So I knew Josh because he was doing merch. Andrew, I knew him because he was the other Ingested session player, but I really got to know Andrew on the headlining tour we did for Tide of Death and Fractured Dreams that we did in 2024. Was it 24? Was it last year?
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah,
bloody
the album
remember.
came out last year and
Time flies. I
yeah,
lose track of it.
I know you're
Yeah,
telling me, man. Time flies by too. Like I remember seeing, well, I think it was Jason's last tour was this tour what they did with Flesh God and Shadow of Intent.
that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I think little did I know, because I know Jason personally. He's like one of my buddies.
Yeah, of course. Of course. So now, well, things. I'm a big believer in destiny. We'll say that.
Oh yeah, yeah. But with this new song Altar of Flesh, is that like something that'll be on like the next album, or is that kind of like just like a one-off kind of thing?
My honest answer to that is I have no idea. I think it's just going to be a one-off, but I may be incorrect. I'll have to fact check myself on that. But as far as I'm concerned, it's just a one-off to kind of, well, the sake of breaking through into a new chapter with a new lineup. That's that's the purpose that Altar of Flesh serves.
Yeah. And then when you joined Ingested, were you like listening to like past albums like Suppressing the Boundaries of Human Suffering, Surreption, Architect of Extinction, and so on and so forth, and be like, I gotta play like this? Or did you wanted to bring like your own kind of like style into Ingested?
Um, I think Altar of Flesh was more that was more my opportunity to bring my own style. The way things have always worked with me in the band is they will send me a set list full of songs and tell me to learn them, and that is my reason for knowing like the majority of a lot of the albums that are out. Um, well, personally, I if I'm going to listen to an Ingested album, I listen to the past couple of albums because the modern production, the modern riffs, the modern sound. It's more up my street. But like I said, the only time I do learn songs and listen to songs is if I need to learn them. Um, which is a lot of fun because that also means that the more I hear music like this, the more my mind opens to it, and the more I will have a mind for that sort of music and that kind of context for bass, if you will. So whenever I go into a studio, I'll know that which style is going to fit that sound better.
Yeah. Yeah. And then with playing like the old songs, do you try to like stick to how it was on the album, or do you try to add your own little spin to them?
Um, a bit of both. So I'll learn, and this goes for pretty much any song that I ever learn, with the exception of covers that I might post on the internet on social media. But I will play the absolute basis of the song, and then sometimes I might do simple things like play the octave note of certain notes. Um, so I do keep it straightforward to how it is on the recordings for the sake of the live performance being as close to the recordings as possible, if not better. At the same time, if there is room for me to noodle, then I will.
Nice. And as a bass player, I know you've heard your fair share of bass player jokes and memes and all that stuff, but I think you find ways to not gravitate towards flashy bass playing, but instead I think you find ways to link what the guitars are doing with the melody and what the drums are doing with the rhythm. So what I want to ask is when it comes to like playing with, of course, with either be with Ingested or Warm Shepherd or even Steel May Mage, like what's like your approach to like playing bass?
um, so similar to live playing, my first thing is learn the song. And then I will actively look for room for me to do something differently. But more often than not, I do end up just following the guitars. Because the riffs that the guitars do are already like enough to make me look flashy, if that makes sense. Sometimes, though, admittedly, with Worm Shepherd specifically, the guitar parts are, I mean, just having a smaller fretboard, I can understand why they're playable on guitar. But for me as a bassist, as a human being and a bassist, I still have my limitations. So sometimes I might simplify things. But at least then people can't complain that I'm playing only what the guitar's playing, because that is quite well, that's something that people don't really like that much. But then what do you expect us to do? Just play root notes? No, I want my job to be interesting,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
And then talking about like your bass setup, because I've seen like some of your cover snippets and you have like a very beefy bass tone. So I'm always curious like what's like your bass setup in terms of like the basses you use, strings, pedals, amps, and all that good stuff.
So the bass I use at the minute is my Overload Achilles 5. Now, Overload, a wonderful bunch of people. They're from Rome in Italy, and they make basses to order. So it's one thing playing a 37-inch the scale length headless multi-scale 5-string bass, and then it's another thing having it being made for me. So it's an inspiration itself. And all I want to do is play it. And as for my pedals, I've got an entire pedal board full of dark glass pedals. So um I'm going into a Shure XD16, which is a guitar and bass wireless slash tuner pedal, which is great because when you step on it, it mutes it, and the tuner's extremely accurate. It's God given, if I'm to say, and it's quite industry standard. Battery life is amazing, but anyway, and I run straight into the Luminol Booster Ultra, which is Dark Glass's second to latest pedal, which I did a demo for actually on YouTube. And then I go into an X Ultra and then an Adam. So my distortion comes from my X Ultra, but when it goes through the Adam, when it gets to the last part of the signal chain where my DI is out, um, it kind of, I won't say mellows it down, but if anything, it's more of a signal boost, but then that kind of rounds off the distortion so that it's not really ugly. And it kind of emphasizes the parallel processing, meaning when I turn my Adam off, the distortion is very sort of overwhelming. The high end and the low end aren't really blended that well, but as soon as the tab sim, the extra EQ, the extra volume boost, the compression, when I turn on the Adam, it boosts everything, adds a hell of a lot more low end, and gives my notes a lot more clarity without having to rely on the distortion to make my tone really bright.
All right, nice, nice. And I noticed you also play with like also pick, but you also use fingers too. So when it comes to like the song, how do you decide like, okay, I'm gonna use a pick or I'm gonna use fingers?
So, as a standard option, I use pick for the majority of metal playing because of the attack. There's only been so far, with the exception of Steel Mage, in recent times, there's only been one exception where I have recorded both with a pick and fingers on a song. It's an unreleased Worm Shepherd track, but there was a section which was higher up on the fretboard on the thinner strings, and playing it with a pick made it seem really ugly and inaccurate. Whereas when I use my fingers, it was not only a breeze to play, but every single note has definition in itself, almost like a programmed instrument, which is something I'm really proud of, and it sounds better. Um, with Ingested, like I say, as a default option, I use a pick because of the attack. I have there have been times where I'll be playing on stage and I will drop my pick and then I can use my fingers immediately because I learnt to play bass finger style first.
Yeah.
Again, as a standard thing to have, because I know traditionally that's how basses are meant to be played.
Yeah. Have you
But
ever get like
I,
the bass
yeah,
player just be like, yeah, picks are for pussies, man.
oh, all the time, and it does my head in. It's so fucking annoying because what I'll
Yeah.
do is, as soon as I read a comment like that, say I'm on a live stream or something, I will drop the pick and then start using my fingers, and I look directly into the camera as if to say, are you happy now? Like, is this what you want?" Um, so and it normally blows people's minds. And something really funny happened recently where that did happen. I was actually playing an Ingested song. I was playing Altar of Flesh, actually, on the TikTok live stream. And I say TikTok live, I'm not trying to be one of them guys, but what I have noticed about TikTok is when you're scrolling on live streams, um, it you don't need to be following somebody in order to view their live. So every time I do click off every time I end my live stream on TikTok, I notice I've gone up by 80 plus followers. That doesn't happen on Instagram. So it's a nice bit of exposure on currently the one of the world's biggest platforms, if not the biggest. So,
Yeah.
but off topic, but what did happen was somebody said, "Oh, of course you're sat there playing with a pick." So the first thing he accused me of was not actually playing it. So then what I do is my pedal board is set up so that I can only really play it if I've got my wireless connected. Um, so I did have my wireless plugged in, and because I soldered a right angle onto the end of my jack for my wireless, you can't really see it when I'm sat down playing. So what I did was I lifted my bass up and said, I have a wire cable, so I'm not syncing it up. Then what I did was press the space bar and then started playing exactly the riff I was just playing, just to say, fuck you, I am playing it. What the hell? And
Like a
so
boss.
like a boss. There you go. And then he said, "What?" And then he said, "Yeah, but you're still playing it with a pick. Bassists aren't meant." So I pressed the
Yeah.
space bar again to continue the song and put my pick on my desk and
Yeah.
started
Yeah.
playing with
All I gotta
fingers.
say is Lemmy Jason Newsted. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, that's it. So people, shit all over pick playing bassists, but I mean, why? I don't get
Yeah.
it.
And also like Tom Araya, Glenn Benton. Come on.
I know some of the best bassists in the world for the biggest bands play with picks. I mean, it's a preference. I don't understand why people are salty about it. I don't get it at all. It's
Yeah, it
weird.
helps you like rip the lines easier.
Oh, absolutely. Well,
Because if
whatever
you
works
try
for
with
you
the
works for
pick, if
you.
you try with fingers, it sound a bit sloppy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Whatever works for you works for you.
Yeah.
And same with anybody else.
Hell yeah. And so kind of like also in the end to wrap things up, what's next for whether it be with Ingested or Warm Shepherd? I know we got that new Ingested song out right now. It's just anything else with both Ingested or Warm Shepherd that you would also like to plug if you're allowed to say.
So we do have an Eastern European tour coming up with Born of Osiris,
My
as we are
boys.
main support for them. So that is my biggest plug at the minute. In regards to Worm Shepherd, I would keep your eyes peeled because there is stuff going on behind the scenes, which I won't disclose for now, but I'm sure you can put two and two together. We've just released an album and we want people to keep listening to us. So keep your eyes peeled and your ears prepared because I believe that the stuff that you are going to hear from us from now on will reshape Worm Shepherd as a name, as a brand, um, and effectively the whole pathway that we'll be taking from now on. Um, Otherwise, yeah, it's the tour with Born of Osiris is what people should keep their eyes on. If you are from anywhere in Eastern Europe, then y tickets are online.
Nice. Nice. So thank you, Thomas, for this interview. It was great to be able to talk with you today. It's just any final words you want to say to the viewers that are watching this to close this out?
Yes, thank you very much for getting me to 18K followers on Instagram. I'm very, very happy about that.
But it's great to have you. So everybody, Thomas O'Malley from Ingested and Worm Shepherd, and we'll see you next time.